Hey everybody, I wanted to make a little milestone video. Um, so I'm just kind of skipping over this. Of course, you should read all this, but you see 4 files here. That's a little confusing. This breakdown assignment is actually due today, the day I'm recording this, Thursday, May 23rd. If you want the incentive point, the idea of the breakdown, we did some work on this in class with the lab students. The idea of the breakdown is it helps you organize your thoughts, right? When you jump into this assignment, let me just, sorry, go back to the browser and download the doc because that walks me through what I need to do by steps. Um, you kind of like chip away at one problem at a time, but I wanted to propose that an alternate way of thinking about doing some large piece of work is to first do an overview of what has to be done. Look at the things that are there and determine where am I confused about what the point is. Sometimes that can be hard if, this part depends on some other part and you can't understand this until you get to this. But I think especially in a milestone, where you're kind of doing a recap of the things you've already learned, you shouldn't look at any particular step and say, boy, I have no idea how to do that, because it should be based on something that you've already done. So that's the idea of the breakdown. I'm going to put that to the side now, and I'm going to focus on this first step. That's really what this video is about. So you should have decided where you're going to live for milestone 1. Most of you just chose Chicago, which is fine. If you chose something else and it doesn't happen to be on this list, feel free to send me an email and say, oh, I really want to compare. Someone had Little Rock, Arkansas, so now I think I can add Little Rock to this list. I want to compare Little Rock to one of these other cities. But for most people, I would say you're going to do Chicago and one of these cities. I'm going to do Anchorage versus Nashville just for fun. So next thing I'm going to do here is download the Excel file, open that up, and then I'm going to download the cities data, because that's really the next step. I've got to get the data that I'm interested in for the city and bring it over. Okay. I think I can copy and paste out of here without enable editing, but this one I definitely need to enable editing because I'm working in it. I said I was going to do Anchorage, and I was going to compare that to Nashville. You can see that these boxes aren't big enough, so the first thing I would do is just unmerge and center and make it a little bigger. So there we go, and bring that all the way down there. Okay. I did do some rearranging. So if you downloaded an early version of this on Monday, it may look different now. And I've tried to do some things that help make the transfer of data easier, like moving the city names off to the side. I'm just going to do one here instead of all 3 aspects. So let's take, I was thinking about precipitation because I feel like the precipitation is kind of important to me in terms of my experience of a city. So I'm going to call this, where am I taking this from? Nashville precipitation. I'm going to put it right here. And I'm bringing the top label over. I can make this say precipitation if I want to write it out, but I can leave it as precip if I want. And then I need to do the same thing for Anchorage. So I need to find Anchorage. There it is. And I need to find precip, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay. And so I can do that, and I can do that. All right. So I would go ahead and do that for aspect 2 and aspect 3 and just, get everything over, and then I can close the city's data and I can move on to doing the statistics. So again, the point here is I want to end up, if I go back to the Word document, I want to end up concluding which city I want to live in and why. And so, if I'm thinking about precipitation, I need to look at the measure of center. I need to look at the measure of spread. So I'm going to maybe put my mean calculations here, and I'll put my median calculations here. And my aspect one is precipitation, and aspect one is precipitation. And my city one is Anchorage, and my city two is Nashville. And I can now do some copying and pasting here, here, here. Remember, you can make columns wider if you need to. Go in between the letters at the top and drag it to the right. That makes it larger. All right, well, let's do it. So I want the mean. Mean is average. And I need to do that for the precipitation. Click on the top. So I do the whole column. Okay, I got this number with a lot of decimals. I'm going to go ahead and shorten that up. And then I want to do the mean of precipitation, again, average for Nashville. Okay, these are very similar numbers. That's the first thing I noticed. Down to the third decimal place is where I have to go to get a different result. All right, let me check out the median. Median, and this is for Anchorage precipitation. And then the median for Nashville precipitation. Okay, same, which is that the middle day when put in order of the amount of precipitation is 0. That means that 50% of the days there was no precipitation in both of these. And I don't know, how far I'd have to go to find what it is. But this is not really going to help me compare because it's the same number. So this is all I have to go by. It shows me that there's a little more precipitation in Anchorage, but it's pretty similar to Nashville. Let's look at the spread and see if that tells us anything else. So for the spread, I would do range and standard deviation. And for the range, let's get the precipitation in here and here. All right, so range, I just have to do the max minus the min. Max, column B, minus the min for column B. So 1.519. And then in Nashville, max of column F minus the min of column F. All right, okay. So this shows me that Anchorage has a larger range, more spread out, more variation potentially. And let's look at the standard deviation and see if it follows the same trend. So standard deviation, we're calling this a sample because there's more dates than just 1 year. I'm just sampling by looking at 2023. And then for Nashville, same thing. I'm using the sample and I'm doing it on column F. Okay, so this confirms that the range and the standard deviation, which both measure spread, are telling me that Anchorage has more variation. So if I was interested in more consistency with precipitation, then I would go with Nashville. And if I wanted more variation, days that are really snowy or rainy and days that aren't, then I would go with Anchorage. So when you're writing your paragraph here, first of all, if I just go through and talk about each measure of center, each measure of spread, that would be 6 sentences, because I could say, well, looking at the mean, Anchorage had a higher precipitation than Nashville. Looking at the median, then I would have 12 sentences, because I'd have 1 sentence for this, 1 sentence for this, 1 sentence for this, 1 sentence for this. I don't encourage you to do that, because that's 12 sentences is a very long paragraph. A paragraph, 3 to 5 sentences. Pick the things that are influencing your decision. I'm probably not going to mention this statistical comparison at all because they have the exact same value, right? I may not even choose to mention this one because although Anchorage is higher, it's very similar. And so it's like, is there really a point in saying, well, there's a little more precipitation in Anchorage than Nashville? I might roll it into one sentence and say, based on the measures of center, Anchorage and Nashville are very similar in terms of the amount of precipitation they receive. But based on the measures of spread, I can see that there's more variation in terms of the day's precipitation, because that's what I'm measuring here. How much precipitation was there in one day? So I saw more variation in Anchorage than I did in Nashville. And again, you have to decide, does that sound good to me? Sometimes more variation is not as easy as a thing to connect with as more consistency, which is the opposite of variation, right? So if you want to think about it in terms of that, do I want consistency or do I want variation? Again, 3 to 5 sentences here. So you're pulling from any of these little pairs to make your comparisons. You've got 12 to choose from. I'm recommending 3 to 5 to build your paragraph. And you can always start with, I prefer living in Anchorage. And here's why. Then you go on and you make your statements. I can see that blah. I can see that blah. You don't have to choose all things that support your conclusion. You're welcome to say, add in a sentence that's like, I do want to mention that there is one thing that Anchorage loses on, and it's this measure of sunniness or whatever it is. It doesn't all have to be all things that support your conclusion. You're welcome to bring nuance in and say, yeah, it's not one-sided. It's these are the things that argue for Anchorage, and there's more of them, and that's why I'm picking Anchorage. Okay, I hope that helps. That's a big part of the milestone. From there, you're going to do some real estate picking, and I'm going to make a video about that next.